think we're good. Yeah. Great. Thank you. And I think we'll go ahead and get started. I didn't see Adam, so if you don't mind, Tessa, if we hold the PFAS discussion until after the first item, and hopefully Adam will join by then. But we'll go ahead and get started and handle the CEDEN modernization item first. Good morning. Thank you all for attending. This is Jarma Bennett with the State Water Resources Control Board. And this is already our March CEDEN user group meeting. As I was just mentioning, we had a request for the first item, but the requester isn't here yet, so we're going to change the order and talk about the CEDEN modernization project and come back to that first item after that. So as I mentioned in the write-up for the item, and we've made some somewhat last-minute changes to the EDD for the new CEDEN database. Again, if you haven't been tuning into our process for the last year, we've been working on a proof of concept project to modernize CEDEN and also incorporate the swamp database, and working through this process with a company called EarthSoft, and they've been customizing a standard product that they have called Equus, but we're making it web-based, so users don't have to install anything on their computer. They can just go to the internet, similar to our current process, and request vocabulary from the during that process, and also check their files during that online process. So again, it's a proof of concept project. We're starting with chemistry, and if that's successful, then we'll move on to the other data types so that everything is consistent and stored in the same system. We are a little bit behind schedule, not surprising for an IT project. At this point, I think we're looking at asking you all users to test in May. So we will, as we kind of hone in on that date, we'll I'll give you more specifics on how you can participate in that. And we've been working off of this Google workbook, and I've been, as we've gone along, adding tabs, and so now we have this current version where, as I mentioned, we've added our particle size range here at the end, and we currently in our system, there were a bunch of size ranges in our matrix field, or there are a bunch of options for size range for different matrices, and we wanted to simplify that list, make it more straightforward. So we had proposed to make that part of the fraction list, but through discussion at a previous meeting here and with our internal group, we thought it would be best and more straightforward, even though, again, it was kind of a last minute change, to add a specific column to capture these data and keep the fraction list and matrix list pretty short. And so that's what we've done here. And the other changes that we made relatively recently are to that we had a let's see what we called it. Location code and sample method. We are removing, or we've removed from this EDD. They will be part of a field module when we get there. And so the idea is to try to reduce the number of data fields in our chemistry template that are not known by the laboratory. We think this will reduce the, we'll have the labs will be able to better complete the template and won't have to get things off the chain of custody that don't usually exist there. So with those explanations, are there any questions or concerns with these changes?
Hi, Jarmar, this is Marco.
Hi, Marco.
Hi, so I kind of forgot this over time, you know, all the different meetings that we've had, but is the template that you're talking about, is that going to be still like a SWAMP CEDEN specific Excel template? Or is this the template that Equus provides like in a standard format that users are going to have to populate? And what you're talking about now is just really showing us how to crosswalk the data from an existing CEDEN template into what the Equus template will want us to populate.
It is, my understanding both, I think, from your question, it is the template that will be uploaded to provide your data to CEDEN, which will, you know, in the future encompass SWAMP. But it's an Excel, you know, tool. I have the just Excel version of it, I think, open here. So it's similar to what we have now, that you fill out the columns, rows with your data, and then you'll upload it to the data checker site, and it'll return errors, and then you can fix those errors. One of the benefits with this proof of concept project is that you'll be able to make changes while it's to your data within the checker. So it's a online interactive data checker instead of getting your errors back, going back to your Excel file, making changes, re-uploading that, seeing those errors, and then making changes to your file, re-uploading it. You can make changes right within the checker itself, and then you can download the final version of your data, so you can have that to keep, you know, say you made a spelling mistake or something, that you'll have that final version. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so what you're showing now is the Equus EQ EDD template format. So there's really not going to be a CEDEN template anymore. It's going to be use Earthsoft's Equus template to submit your information.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could look at it this way. That way, the way I look at it is this is the new CEDEN template that you submit to, you know, the database that is you know, being provided by Earthsoft, and it's based on their Equus product. But yeah, it's the same thing, I think.
Yeah, this is Tessa. Just because this, you know, our Equus CEDEN template, it only works for CEDEN. You know, it's not like no other Equus users would use this template. It's just customized to CEDEN. So it's like they run databases for all different states, but each one has their own custom template with the fields that they want. So it's not, I mean, it's the like Equus CEDEN. It's both template.
And we'll be keeping our same, we've talked a little bit previously about the valid values and vocabulary. And for the most part, we're keeping our values. We have made some changes to try to clean up some values and where we thought it made sense and take this opportunity. And so I have some of them here. So there are changes to it, but again, as Tessa said, this will be our vocabulary for our template. Any other questions?
Jarma, I have a specific question about like removing the location code in the sample method. I'm just curious how that will work with the field template. I think maybe it's because I don't really quite understand how the field will work.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say you have at the same station, you have different locations that you're collecting the same information, you have from the bank, you're collecting information, you're collecting something from mid-channel. How is that going to be represented in the database if they just upload chemistry?
I think that will, it'll be a unique sample by the sample ID. If you don't upload field, I don't think it will, I don't see how it would, you will know as a data consumer the differences, but hopefully you'll have your field data to accompany it.
So, are you saying that the sample ID? I thought the sample ID isn't the sample ID still like something that the data provider is creating? It's not like a.
Well, it is a little confusing. There's the one that is provided by the the person creating the sample, the sampler, that is a made up. I'm sure it follows rules, but they just provide that ID. And then there's the one behind the scenes that is a concatenation of different fields, or a combination of different fields to show the unique record. But maybe this was also a change from what we talked about before, but sample ID is now a required field. So.
Okay. So how does those link together when you do the field information? Because I'm just trying to envision this field. When I think of a field information, I just think of field measurements. And like in particular, we'll only take field measurements at one location at the same station, but the other location doesn't have field measurements because we only need it for one. So I don't understand how they will connect. Like, do you list out every single sample ID? Like, or I'm just trying to figure out how they connect. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you will have that the field collection module will include sample ID and things like location code. So you record those details for each sample.
Oh, wow. Okay. So for each chemistry sample, when you're submitting field measurements, you're also providing the sample ID for all of your chemistry and tox and like all the other data types.
That's how I envision it. Tessa, do you have any other understanding?
No, that's my understanding as well, that when you get your field data in there, like, this station and that station and these locations, you have to say what sample IDs were taken, at that location and station.
So is it like a separate
in the field?
Workbook? Okay. So is it like a separate workbook for like your field measurements versus like you're capturing like the field information for your chemistry and tox and all is it a different workbook?
Well, it will be you can use a different workbook. We anticipate having a module where you can take your mobile device and collect information on it. So like a tablet, and enter it right into an app.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to visualize how it'll connect together. I think I'm just worried about it being lost, how it will connect together, and then us not being able to really uniquely identify where things are located in the chemistry. But I'm just hoping that it works in the field. I'm sorry. Just trying to.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact tie-ins, but I think it will be at sample ID and then another field to confirm that it's not just a typo or a duplicate or something. So there'll be a reinforcement of that connection.
Yeah, I don't think our sample IDs are unique enough to be able to, like, because we take our sediment at a different spot. I don't know, I'd have to look at that. So when we take them at the different locations, we have like a set standard for our sample ID, and I'm just trying to, like, it's not unique per constituent or anything like that.
Yeah, it seems like the chemistry sample ID would have to include location code, because if you're in like a lake and you sample 5 different spots within that lake, you can't give it the same sample ID, but you'd want to know what those 5 different locations represent to have your chemistry data separated.
Well, I think you could just, if you could include that in your ID, or you could just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then when you're on the field collection template, you would be specifying that the sample ID that included the 1 was location, X, and with collection method, A, and then sample ID that included the 2 was this other location and this other method.
Yeah, that works when you have both field and chemistry being entered at the same time. But in this situation where you're only going through one data type at a time, people are going to start loading their chemistry data, and then they're going to have to wait another year or however long before they can enter field data. But wouldn't they be submitting that field data to the current CEDEN system? Or do you expect them to hold on to that field data?
There'll be a short time that there's not a, we don't, I'm not exactly, don't have a timeline yet, but this is all dependent on having a successful chemistry project. But if that is successful, it's our understanding, if we move to the field collection module, that's fairly straightforward. We wouldn't be asking for a lot of customization, and so it would be a much faster turnaround. So there will be a gap for CEDEN. We will have a transition period, so it won't be mandatory to use the new system for a few months. And during that time, we'll be developing, again, if all goes well, we'll be developing that field module. Gerald, you had your hand raised?
Yes, not as experienced as some other folks, so I'm trying to make sure that I learn going forward. As an example, I've often used dupe or blank as part of a sample ID. So I think what I'm hearing now is that I would be wiser in the future to consider having an extension of my sample ID that would identify when things are in the same place, such as the example given a moment ago for a lake where I might have several different depths where I'm sampling from the same lat and longitude, or as an example in a stream where I might be sampling a water sample but also a sediment sample at the same location. I'll probably have to use that sample ID now as a way to distinguish it rather than the location such as inflow or sediment, correct? That's kind of what I think I'm hearing.
Once we have the field module up and running, then that information, location, and well, for the matrix, I mean, you'll be able to have the matrix field tell you what it is. But for location, once the field module is up and running, then you'll have that to use, and you can, but you can put your make your sample ID, whatever works for you is, and then for your, we have the sample type code to identify dupes if you want to, certain kinds of other types of samples, if you want to use that instead of your sample ID. But you could put that in your sample ID as well.
I think the matrix will help me with the water versus the sediment, maybe less with the water depths, but then I guess that will still be there also. So I guess that does help me so I don't have to generate a bunch of new IDs. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jarma, that means in your field template, you are also including the matrix along with sample ID to be able to link those two together. In the field, I know you don't know what's going on in the field per se, but you're saying that it's not just the sample ID that's linking to your chemistry and tox. You're saying there's multiple fields that link.
I think it will be more than just one field, so that we, there's a typo or something that it won't link up with the wrong chemistry. It won't link up the wrong field data to the wrong chemistry data. But again, we haven't got specifics about, or we haven't gotten into specifics about that yet. But that's what seems like should happen. So again, if you're just one number off, you're not messing up. It'll stop you from doing it because it doesn't match up, I would think.
Okay.
I also want to clarify when I have been talking about this online checker and interactive online checker, that's for files 500 rows and less and fewer. If you have more than that, you could either break up your file, or we will have another submittal route. It just won't have the features. It'll be you won't have that interactive interface to check your work.
So Jarma, I'm sorry, just to clarify also, for when you have locations that are kind of separated out, it seems like you will always have to have field data submitted with your chemistry. Have you guys decided, I thought it was still up in the air, but have you guys decided that yes, if this is successful, you will move forward with chemistry by itself instead of moving forward with all the data types at once? Have you guys decided that?
Yes.
So there will be a time where people are submitting in both two different types of systems.
Yes.
Can those people still submit to the old system, like while everything's going on, and then, or are we forced to submit to both systems?
I think the timing will work out so that we should have the field, hoping to have the field module up and running before you're forced to use the new chemistry module. But we will not wait till all the data types are complete before requiring submittal to the new system for chemistry and field.
What about toxicity? When is that one on the list?
I think that's after tissue.
Tox is after tissue? Oh, wow. So, I mean, how much tissue do you guys get versus toxicity?
I don't have that number. That input came from our the integrated report assessment unit and their need for those data.
Oh, wow. Okay. So tox could be like years, right? I'm sorry, I'm just want to.
You know, I think it's okay. Yeah, there. I guess that, yes, a confirmation of more than 1 year.
Yeah. Okay.
And what about taxonomy?
I think that was, Tessa, do you remember? I think that was after.
That's when we shifted around. Yeah, I honestly, we initially had taxonomy pretty late, maybe the last, but we were considering moving it up. But now I can't remember if we still were going to do tissue first after field. I'm not sure if we came to a final decision on that, but.
Yeah, field is definitely the next one up.
Yeah, field including habitat, you know, including like bioassessment, physical habitat is also included in this next phase.
So bioassessment is with field?
The habitat portion, the physical habitat portion is going to be coming soon. Or we're doing field, more basic field next as well, and then also the habitat, the physical habitat piece.
Okay.
Lisa, was that you?
Yeah, it was me. I just wanted to make a comment regarding the sample ID. If you're going to ask people to increase the amount of information in there, you might want to increase the text number. I know we already run into a problem with getting sample IDs that are longer than the allowable text, so I end up abbreviating things.
Okay. Do we need longer? More characters. Okay. Thank you for that input. You know, yeah, I think our intent is that, you know, for once the field module is there, you'd be putting that information into field, and so then it'd be that field module. So then you wouldn't need to embed it into the sample ID, but you still may want to. And yeah, I didn't realize that 40 would be pushing it, so. It's probably not something that could happen now, but we can look at it as we into the future. We're already talking phase 2 changes, but that's good to know.
Hi, Jarma. I'm sorry that I'm late joining.
We skipped your item, but we will come back to it.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you.
Regarding sort of the field module is coming next, but you know, moving some of the stuff out of chemistry into the field module, and then how exactly is what's the join between field and lab? I'm sorry if you've already covered this.
We covered it, but not very well.
Okay.
I believe it's sample ID and then at least an additional field to make sure you have the right sample ID. We don't want it to join on too many fields but I think enough that you're not just making a typo and getting to the wrong join.
Okay.
But I don't
I guess,
remember what those specifically are.
because I guess the idea that you wouldn't need to add extra items to, or like, you know, concatenations to a sample ID without having the fields that you're concatenating into the sample ID present in both tables, it seems that doesn't seem to work. So it does seem like sample ID needs to be longer.
There is, you know, 2 sample IDs, and we should come up with a different name for one of them. This sample ID, if you're looking at your screen that's shown here, is, you know, a user provided number, and so that was is now required. And I can't remember if it was always required, but it's now required. So I'm not. Were you saying that? Oh, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
I guess it's that. I guess there are some sampling procedures you would maybe have like everything be short, and you would have pre-labeled samples or something where you've, you know, got sort of numerical bottle labels. But if the idea is that something that used to make a sample record or a collection record unique, like location code and sample method, that's now been moved out into another table joined on sample ID, I think most people will end up concatenating some form of those onto sample ID, right?
Okay, so so you think 40 is not enough as well?
I think it could get tight since it's already getting tight. And now, you know, if someone wants to differentiate 2 samples, if they don't have sort of everything pre-numbered or pre-labeled, they would need to use, you know, if they want to differentiate, you know, if it's left bank, right bank, you know, locations or different methods.
Okay.
I guess my experience with people's sample ID designs is that sometimes they're just like, you know, 1001 through 2000 or something, but most often they're embedding real information in there. And now it seems like they'll need to embed even more real information.
Okay. And Jarma, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if other people have other experiences, that'd be good to hear. But that's just been my experience.
That's our experience too, Adam. I mean, most people are very, like, that's why I fought for the sample ID, because a lot of programs really like their sample ID because it means something to them. And half of my data providers, that's like the only thing they like from most of the codes. That's the one thing that they know that's theirs. So they really like it. And they kind of hold on to it too. But when you say sample ID, Jarma, you're talking about the other one you said it's hidden and it's behind the scenes. That's what we'll be connecting to the field, right?
No, the sample ID that you're seeing there will need to be part of that connection because of the things that have been brought out. That's what I believe will need to be happening, or my understanding of what will be happening.
Okay.
Cass or Cassandra?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. And maybe you talked about this at another meeting, but is all the current CEDEN data going to be chemistry data, going to be migrated to the Equus system?
No, we're not planning to migrate the current CEDEN data into the Equus system. We're going to keep them separate. We hope to be able to develop reporting out tool that can put them together in a meaningful way, but we're going to keep them separate.
Okay, and then just to follow up on the discussion about the location and field versus chemistry, I was just trying to envision then moving forward if chemistry is going to Equus, and then a user's trying to pull it out of your system. I can't figure out how they're going to hook up their field to their chemistry exactly without some kind of a location crosswalk. It would just be it could be the station and the date and the time, but if field information is collected at multiple locations, or you're trying to get it linked up exactly to your chemistry field, your chemistry results rather, hopefully there's going to be some proof of concept that that's going to work on the back end, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just making a plug for that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And was it discussed that, I mean, if this is built because the labs, if they put not recorded, is that going to be a big deal? I'm just kind of thinking about the other side. If a program doesn't care about location code, then they're probably not giving it to the labs. But if they do, they're giving it to the labs. So I'm just kind of curious if you thought about just having the labs put not recorded.
Well, we did have it in the template up until last month. So I think we did have that thought, but you know, I think it will, in the long run, and make for a more streamlined template. It may be that we delay rolling out of, this is just me talking, not the rest of our development team, but it could be that we delay the even optional use of the chemistry module until the field module is ready, so that we don't have those problems. But I think, again, in the long run, to simplify this chemistry template, to put the data that the people collecting the samples know more than the labs is a better option. They could just put not recorded, or we could take the step and have this difficult time maybe for a couple months, but then have a better product in the end. It is, I think, the direction we chose to go. And again, we can talk about delaying the chemistry rollout until like I said, we were going to have it being optional for a while, but maybe we just delay. So that's something we can discuss with our team. With that, if we didn't have that gap of not having a new field module where you would be able to collect this information and submit it to the same system, would that kind of alleviate your concern?
Yeah, it will at least they'd be able to submit it all at the same time. I mean, I think I just really need to see what the field looks like, because in our field template now, they just have to put field results. It just seems, in my mind, I'm having to put my chemistry also in my field result, like chemistry information, like all the sample IDs. But that's,
yeah, I mean, I think the way that I'm thinking of it is more, and maybe Tessa can correct me or add, and it's more like a collecting information about your time out in the field. You're saying it's you can record the weather, you can record where you're taking the sample, your sample ID, and so it's not just field measures. It's kind of about the sampling event.
Yeah. It's just a lot more information to pull together for field data. Like you definitely will need your chemistry and everything together to be able to export your field information, or to have all that together. So thank you, Jarma. Thank you for explaining. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, no problem.
I mean, because sorry.
Go ahead.
Someone was talking. Oh, sorry. It just, my one worry here is that to me it sounds like it's switching from sort of one template, or mainly one worksheet in one template, to two separate templates that are going to need to like have a perfect join with no typos. That doesn't seem simpler to me.
Well, I had mentioned, I think before you got on, that at least one option for entering field data will be, again, if everything's successful, an online or not a mobile device template or app that you can, fill in as you're out there in the field, so that it's you're not dealing with two different spreadsheets necessarily. You're entering some information when you're out in the field, and then you're getting your results and putting them in this format, the chemistry format. But I do see we are getting in on time. So if you have more questions and concerns, please write me, or you can email me, and we can talk about it next time as well. Nick had mentioned or wondered about the differences in location coming through in the latitude and longitude, and I think the scenarios that people were bringing up are when the latitude and longitude is essentially the same, and so those differences wouldn't take place, or you wouldn't see those differences in the latitude and longitudes. I think you noted that, or by saying that sample locations more than 200 feet or meters apart would be independently identified and described. It is not it isn't always interpreted that stations less than 200 feet or meters, and I can't remember the rule, are considered the same. So it's those small differences between the bank and the bottom of the water body are being considered and wanting to be recorded in the data out. And I think with the direction we're going, it could be, and that those differences would be recorded in the field module and brought together with this chemistry template where the results are reported. Okay, so with that, we're gonna move over to our first item, and Adam requested this, and would you mind, Adam, if you giving just a couple minutes to our, a brief description of why you're concerned about how we are currently putting these analytes, and I will show what I found. There maybe I missed some, but how we're currently putting them into CEDEN.
Yeah, so it's broader than PFOA. PFOA is just a nice example because PFOA, PFOS, but it's all the perfluorinated compounds. But we don't have issues with all the perfluorinated compounds yet. The issue is that you have something like PFOA, and for the past 10 or 15 years, we've been using perfluorooctanoate, which is that sort of top one in the table, and the analyte itself can be sort of reported either as the acid, which is perfluorooctanoic acid, or its conjugate base, which is perfluorooctanoate, and they're the same thing. So when someone refers to PFOA, they can be referring to either, basically.
So these two, the first and the second?
Yeah, correct. And so, you know, all the data that has gone into CEDEN so far, you know, has gone under the first one, and then the acid form was added late last year, I think. And the acid form was added with the initialism, like the PFOA, which I think is confusing because the first one is also PFOA. And so the surrogates, so the third line should probably have, you know, its isotope label. And because I'm assuming it is a duplicate of either for, you know, the fourth line or the fifth line. But basically what it comes down to is these compounds can be sort of described two different ways, but they're the same thing, and it's like having mercury and Hg in a lookup list, which is kind of what we're trying to avoid. And so I think we need to decide either, you know, which one to use, or you know, we could crosswalk everything and just call them all PFOA or all PFOA, you know, like for each end, like PFOA, PFOS, PFH, PA, PFBA. But having both in there seems problematic.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Tessa. Can I respond?
Yeah.
Oh.
This is Lisa. Coming from a laboratory standpoint, I actually went in and pulled CAS numbers for PFOA, and nowhere in synonyms does it list perfluorooctanoate. So I think that is a term that somebody just decided to use long ago, but it is not an actual chemistry term. Perfluorooctanoate is only usually used as a part of a compound name, like sodium perfluorooctanoate.
This one?
Well, this is Tessa. I'm just going to respond here because so this is something we've already been looking into for CEDEN 2.0. We're kind of reviewed the entire analyte list. So we kind of already thought about these issues. But just on that last note, perfluorooctanoate is actually the correct anion term for PFOA. It is a term that is used, but it's true the perfluorooctanoate acid is the more commonly referred to of PFOA. But so we've been discussing this with labs and thinking about it kind of from an environmental standpoint. So it's actually in the environment, you mainly find the anion form. So the perfluorooctanoate is what mostly you find in the environment for all PFAS, not just PFOA. But for labs, the methods they use, the target analyte list and the certified reference materials or standards that they use are mainly in the acid form, not entirely, because it is such a long list of compounds. Some of them actually are in the salt, like anion form that they would purchase. But so what we decided is that for CEDEN 2.0, we are going to go with basically how labs are accredited for these compounds. So that is mainly the acid forms, because that's how the labs want to report it, because they want to be consistent with their certificates. And it doesn't make a whole lot of difference, as Adam was saying, in the reporting, because you can kind of, you analyze for really both forms, because they push the pH so that, you know, if there happened to be perfluorooctanoate and perfluorooctanoic acid in a sample, they adjust the pH so that it all goes to that anion form. And that's how they actually analyze it. But you could always, if you know the pH of the original sample, you could always kind of figure out, you know, what those different forms were. So it doesn't make sense to have both names in the system. So that is correct. So we are going to be changing that in CEDEN 2.0. I think you bring it up right now that we could change it right now and not wait for CEDEN 2.0 to be deployed. So that's something we could think about, and how to kind of crosswalk or do that change. I think that covered what I was, all the points. So that's going to be the general system going forward for all the PFAS compounds. Is we're going to line up with what's on the lab's accreditation. And, you know, maybe in the description field, we may have both terms. And we definitely, in the analyte name, we are going to include the acronym for all of them, because that's kind of what most people actually go by, is just the acronym. And it's the same acronym that's used for both the acid and anion forms. So it kind of covers both.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
if there's additional feedback on that, let me know.
Yeah, our main concern was just that there were two values that were both PFOA and all the others. So if it's acid, it's whatever, that's fine, as long as it's just one version. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Gerald, did you have a question or point to make here?
I think part of it was taken care of. I was going to say, obviously, depending upon the pH, you could be in equilibrium condition. They both are there. So probably as part of the analyte name, you can either cross-reference, put in parentheses, whatever, the two forms, the anionic and the acid form. The next question I was going to ask about is just reminding me, when I'm seeing these surrogates being identified further down on your table, like 13C2 or C8, is that reminding me that the 13 carbon there's two of them, or is which one is being as an isotopic form? So is it carbon 2, or there are two carbon 13s?
There are two carbon 13s.
Okay,
and then on the next one, there
second
are 8
example,
carbon
8.
13s.
Thank you for reminding me. Appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Lisa, I'm not sure that I had fully understood your point. I'm not sure if what Tessa has said in the direction that she says we'll be going for CEDEN 2.0. If you have any responses to that or questions, I just want to make sure to give you a chance to respond if you had anything to say.
Oh, no, I was just going for how we're accredited.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, I got that there. Yeah, Tori.
Jarrett, so for next time, I know we might not have time. I would like to circle back to that dissolved definition, the fraction definition, and I'm hoping that you can kind of show us the different particle, like the more details of those next time, maybe. But I can email you that. But I definitely want to go back to the dissolved fraction definition and see if you guys actually decided on changing that.
And this is Tessa. I think Jerma had asked me to follow up on that, and sorry, I didn't follow up with that, but.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. Thank you.
agenda items. Okay, yeah, I'll put that on the agenda for next time. If that's all, then we'll adjourn. Thank you so much for joining us and providing input here. And we'll talk about the dissolved fraction definition and the fraction list. If there's anything else in the meantime, please email me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gemma. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you.
See you later.